Esther Mollica, and the title of my book is The Queen of Gay Street. It's about a time in my life when I was a sex and dating blogger for a small women's magazine in New York. I think I was the first one to speak about queer women's topics at the time. And so, in a way, it's almost kind of like Sex in the City, where it's sort of like an edgier, more queer, SJP type of thing. But also, there's a lot of other stuff in there that, it's not entirely about that. Well, I think when I was writing my column, it was more kind of fluffy puns and innuendo, things like that. But what I did in this book was I talked about a relationship with my editor at the time. And it wasn't something that, intentionally we thought was going to happen. She was my editor at the magazine. We ended up hanging out, outside of work and, and dating briefly. And so that's what a lot of the book is about. And, unfortunately, she had a lot of substance abuse problems. And so I think that this work is not as light and fluffy as the column because the stakes were higher and it's more serious. I always keep on me a diary, a notepad, or something where I can, write down things as they happen. If it's very pivotal or life changing, there are times when like someone will say something really funny, and I'll write it down, and I'll remind them about it 3 years later, and they're like, "How do you remember it?" I'm like, "Because I wrote it down. It was that funny." I realized as I finished it, the world's changed a lot, especially the dating scene. I thought that I kind of sounded like a boomer when I was done with it because I met my wife about 10 years ago. And, back then they didn't have like dating apps where you swipe left or right. And so, the online component is very different, I think, for meeting people in person. Also, the queer scene, gender is less binary now than it was before. It's like you had to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. And, I think that that is less rigid now. So, in that sense, maybe when I write scenes about, being femme or, things like that, that might not be as relatable now. But I do think that some things are still relatable. Like I think with the LGBT community, it's very challenging to find someone that that you work well together with, especially when it's like a very small community. And I think probably the most surprising thing to me was that the majority of my readers are uh, straight women who they said they wanted to read about, queer Sarah Jessica Parker, like the idea kind of appealed to them. And I just think it's really interesting because I wrote this for a queer audience, but it seems to be I'm reaching another audience entirely. I think, my advice is you just have to hold nothing back. You can't be embarrassed or worry about if somebody thinks this is weird. I know before I wrote the book, I had some family members and they told me, you got to stop writing about the gay thing. You're never going to be successful as long as you keep writing about the gay thing. And you could see from my title, that's pretty much how I took their advice. Some of them aren't, happy about it at all. You have to allow yourself to show your weaknesses and let the reader come to their conclusions about your strengths. One thing that not a lot of people know is that my father and my grandfather also self-published novels about their life. And, they would say lines like, I was the smartest, funniest man in the room. And it's kind of like, you got to show, you can't tell. I think the book is for anyone, and it doesn't have to be. I know that I am a, queer woman of color, but I mean, I think a lot of people relate to it, who, from different, genders, different sexualities, with, that time in their life, like feeling lonely, trying to find like the right person that they think they belong with, recovering from other relationships that are traumatic or abusive. I received a fan mail last night from a man that was like, I relate to your book more than other books written by men. And I, I was like, thank you. I didn't expect that.